This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's ChangeMaker is Afira DeVries, the president and CEO of Monarch School Project. Over the past 20 years, she has led innovation and growth for 6 thriving nonprofit organizations, and now she leads the Monarch School in San Diego, a public school that serves homeless students and their families and provides support in academics, social emotional learning, and life skills. Afira, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I want to just start right off talking about the Monarch School. And you have created such a place of hope for unhoused students for several years. Let's just start. How did you find out about this organization, or how did you first get involved?
Well, I was pretty deep into my career on the opposite coast, so I did not know about the Monarch School at all. I was in Virginia. I had been leading United Way organizations for more than 20 years, and I had left the United Way network to work a global job, an organization called Spring Impact, which was phenomenal, consultative organization that worked globally. And the difference between that work and what I had been doing was pretty substantial, because I went from being sort of on the front lines of social care to offering insight, but not owning social work anymore. And so one day after, a couple months into the pandemic, I just said to my husband, I think I'm missing something. I'm missing doing the kind of work that I feel fulfilled by in a richer way. And we decided that I would be open to the universe. And literally, I know this sounds super woo-woo and silly, but the next day on LinkedIn, I was contacted about this opportunity here in San Diego. And I think I'd only been to San Diego maybe once in my life. And I just fell in love with it. I read the description, called my husband over and said, read this and tell me what you think. And he said, it's made for you. And a month later, I was here and doing this work. So that's kind of how it happened. I really feel like somehow the universe sent me here to learn about the Monarch School and to be a part of it.
Those are very brave steps and quite the change. I don't know that many of us are willing to expose ourselves to say we're open to the universe. So I'm very impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. I think it felt wacky at the time, but man, did it work out. So,
and I'm sure every day you've probably been receiving confirmations that you're where you're supposed to be. Let's just talk about Monarch School. Tell me what it is, what you guys are doing. And I'm really impressed how you're making a dent in supporting unhoused youth.
Yeah, this is one of the most extraordinary organizations I've had the blessing of even knowing about, let alone working with and for. And what makes it so amazing is that it is, we're 35 years old here. We're the only of our kind. We're the only public-private partnership that focuses exclusively on educating and nurturing the development of unhoused students. We're a K-12, so we have 3 schools here. And the work is really about building the resilience that is already inherent in our students and their families, and coming alongside them to work with them, not for them, but with them, to move past the complex trauma they live in every day, attain academic success, and become a stronger, more resilient human being through social and emotional learning and life skill development. And what makes Monarch School especially unique is that we have really robust programming and supports for families and caregivers also. And so this place is a community school environment. It is very much a community here. And there's space here for our students and their families in a way that doesn't just address the immediate needs, but is really intended to help a family evolve towards stability. And so it's magical, really, the kind of work that we do here and the ways in which we're able to inspire resilience in our students is something that I think most schools could model and consider incorporating in their own environment, regardless of the population they're serving.
You mentioned that you're the only school of its kind. And why do you speculate there aren't more? I'm assuming that there is a need for many more.
There is such a need for the approaches and practices that are core at Monarch School. The brick and mortar, the beauty of the school, that's lovely, but that's not really what makes Monarch Monarch. It's the way we do our work, the way we interact with and connect with students and build community here. And that is what's needed everywhere. Regardless of the student population, all children benefit from being in an environment that views them as individuals and nurtures them individually, respects the impact of trauma, and is restorative in their approach to addressing trauma. Those kinds of practices are critically necessary everywhere. But when you take the fact that we are focused on unhoused students and really extrapolate that, there are different philosophies on how to address being in such a traumatic situation as a young person in a school environment. There's a school of thought that, creating segregation and pulling kids out of traditional school environments only worsens the situation for them. And there's a school of thought that suggests that when you eliminate differences and create a stigma-free environment because these children are struggling with the same challenges, that's a better environment. That school of thought is a different perspective and philosophy. And so there are a lot of structures, government funding that is connected to the construct of a school environment. And while we believe that the latter description of what a healthy environment for a school-aged, unhoused person is, we agree that that's the way to do it. The former approach, avoiding segregated models, is sort of the common approach. So we've sort of been grandfathered into existence, and we are now pushing against that by showing, our results and our data and saying, look, our kids who are succeeding at a rate that is far more advantageous than what you're seeing in a traditional school. So our graduation rate hovers around 90% every year. And an unhoused student in a traditional environment, the average graduation rate is 69%. So you can see just right there, just looking at that data point alone, you can see that being in a stigma-free environment works for kids. And we're now really interested in beating that drum and causing the broader American school system to pay closer attention to what kids like ours need.
Let's describe that intersection of homelessness and education a little more. I want to dig a little deeper in how does a child's ability to learn impact how they are or aren't succeeding academically? Because I'm listening to you describe this, and I'm thinking it's something most people know by default or instinctually, but what is the real correlation that's going on here at this intersection?
What a great question. Here's what I want to say about that. No one would be surprised to hear about the very evident connections, right? Just like you said. Yes, a student that is not sleeping regularly and not sleeping in a consistent environment is not going to be able to focus. None of us can focus. If we have a medical concern or a toothache, if we are feeling sick on a given day, any of us, we're not going to be able to focus in school and learn. And we're not going to be able to focus and learn when we are a child that is feeling all the feelings of the adults around us. And that's going to cause distraction, and it's going to cause a sense of isolation that causes students to want to hide and to just sort of blend into the background and not be seen, which is antithetical to what it takes for a child to learn, because recognizing one's own strengths and potential is critical to success in the classroom and in life. And then, of course, there's the extraordinary social impact of stigma. And a kid being in an environment where they're hiding from kids that they would normally want to befriend because they don't want their life to be revealed and known. And they'd want to protect their family. They are hiding from the world, which means that they're in a shell that doesn't allow anything to penetrate either, right? They're not coming out and nothing's going in. So these are sort of the baseline overarching assumptions that are largely true about what happens when a child goes to school and they're living in a sustained unhoused condition. But the thing I want everyone to really understand is that the most important correlation between a school environment and the impact on an unhoused student is the extraordinary importance of the feeling of safety and belonging to a child's learning journey. A child that feels safe and part of a community, even for a few hours a day, is going to have far better capacity to absorb, to learn, and to understand their own capacity and skills and gifts and potential. Because safety is directly connected, and belonging are directly connected to a child's capacity to let down their guard and lift their head out of the fog of chaos that they're accustomed to and begin to perceive what their future could be. That's what fundamentally, that is what Monarch School does best and most successfully. We build an environment and a community of safety here. And we are a constant. A student that's unhoused is moving around a lot, experiencing a lot of different adults and a lot of different environments, but they're going to come to Monarch School and they're going to see the same caring, safe, neutral adults every day. And that is a healing environment.
So I looked at some of the numbers here, and I'm wondering, what are the dynamics that you're seeing that are contributing to the numbers here that are needing assistance? Like, are you seeing, like when we talk about other housing programs, they'll say for every one voucher they issue, they could, there's hundreds and hundreds that need it. Like, do you have some indication of what kind of volume we're talking about here for the need?
Yeah, I mean, the need is exponential. So like we serve 300 students here on average, plus another 165 alumni, plus another 135 parents and caregivers. And that is a drop in the bucket, right? So we know that there are at minimum 20,000 additional unhoused students in the San Diego footprint and about 1.4 unhoused students in the traditional American school system. So when you consider that we're the only school of our kind, not to say other schools aren't focused on the social and emotional development of their students, or that they aren't trauma-informed or, focusing on strengths. Those things are happening in progressive schools. But when you consider here in San Diego County that there is this extraordinarily broad number of kids experiencing homelessness in different ways and shapes, and the social solutions for that condition are not being advanced in a way that is really going to solve the problem. For example, affordable housing and creating pathways to stability that don't require extended stays in shelters. Those kinds of solutions are expensive and they take a long time, and they're not happening at a rate that is going to solve the problem in the generational life cycle of our students in this region. And so the unaffordability and the lack of permanent root cause oriented solutions is causing a perpetuation of a problem that you can't fix by making it look better. It has to be fixed by taking a really focused attention to what's causing the problem initially. And that's not healthy. And when you look at the state of California and recognize that 50% approximately of the unhoused population in the United States reside in California, the problem is outpacing the solutions.
50%. That is a statistic that's quite distressing when we're talking about this issue. How has that influenced maybe how you have outreach or scalability for your own program? Because, just with a multiplier, you could go out and create how many more schools? How do you approach that?
Great question. We've been thinking about this pretty much day and night for the past year and have really decided that it's time for us to scale our best work. And you are right. Kay, you're right. It's not viable for us to throw up a bunch of schools across the country, even if we just concentrated in the cities where the problem is most present. It wouldn't be enough, right? And so the approach that we're taking instead is to codify our best knowledge, to take a look at what we've learned in the past 35 years, to develop a curriculum that would allow other educators and student-facing professionals to, learn humbly from our model and to organize a constructed way for people to come here and participate in training. So lower cost, right? Because we're not really we're not going to go around and build Monarch schools everywhere, but we are going to invite those who are in the same space that we are as educators or social care professionals into our environment, into a training environment, learn in a master teaching classroom setting, and then go back to their community and implement our practices with fidelity so that they can begin to, over time, see the importance of the way we approach our work without the need for building business. So again, lower cost, higher yield, because now we're talking about sending multitudes of teachers and professionals back to their environment and having an impact on a broader number of children and their families sooner than later. That's the way we're approaching scale at the moment, because it's really hopefully going to help us reach, over the next decade, about 30% of the unhoused student population in the state would be better served by having better prepared teachers and social care professionals in their lives.
Are there other policy advocacy efforts or partnerships that Monarch School approaches to help alleviate some of this issue also?
Yes, recently, again, this is an area where we, for the past, couple decades, Katie, we've just been sort of keeping our head down, focusing on the kids in front of us and trying to learn from our mistakes and refine our approaches. And so, in recent years, we've come to realize we've learned some things, and we have a set of understanding principles and a set of practices that we think are ready to share now. And so we're just now flipping into an advocacy and influence space. And there are a couple of pretty specific areas we're currently sitting at tables and having important conversations with powers that be and contributing thoughtfully. For example, there is a disproportionate percentage of the unhoused population in San Diego that are Black African-American unhoused families, when you consider that the population here is of Black citizens in the San Diego region, it's only 8%, and it's double when you look at the percentage of the unhoused population. About 16% are Black in this region. And so we have something to say about that and the implications of that reality and the root causes of that reality, the systemic biases that are presenting themselves in social care environments. So we are taking a role in that discussion now at various levels of policy and decision-making. We have a conversation that we're in those spaces around transitional age youth and what happens to students when they are aging out of systems of support into adulthood, and they're not really being supported and nurtured into adulthood after leaving conditions of being unhoused and trying to pursue stability as adults. And so recently, we've been really engaged with the state around directing resources to students that are attempting to pursue college and higher education and career, and they're just sort of being pushed off a cliff, it often feels like for them. And then there's big stuff. There's the conversation around affordable housing in the state of California and creating a direct path from the experience of homelessness to stable housing and creating less reliance on transitional housing and or shelter care. That's really important. That's critically important, because those environments, as well-meaning as they often are often going to re-traumatize children and burden families with additional trauma in environments where they're just feeling unsafe. And so these are the areas where Monarch School, after so many years of existence, we have opinions, ideas, strategies, and concepts for solutions that we now recognize we have a responsibility to share.
We've been talking about the need. We've been talking about some of the strategy approaches that you're taking. And you mentioned a metric earlier about the graduation rate. I want to go ahead and expand on that, because there's other metrics that I'm sure that you are tracking and studying. Can you bring some of those to this conversation? It's not all about the metrics, but I know you and your team have some very impressive ones, so I want you to share about that.
We do. And it's critically important to us to monitor the performance of our work and the impact of our programs. Again, our graduation rate hovering around 90% every year, in contrast to that 69%, really just lends itself to a whole host of additional questions, right? How is that so? And so we also measure qualitative data related to the students' experience on our campus. And so we conduct student site survey, and we ask our students to tell us how they are performing in pretty specific areas of their experience here at Monarch. And one of the critical measures is, a question related to how safe they feel here and how closely they feel that safety is related to their ability to show up every day and to pay attention in class. And so our students report a very high degree of safety. It hovers between 70 and 80% of our students feel safest here on campus. And then they report to us that because of that safety, they're able to build better relationships with others, and they're better able to understand their own skills and gifts. Those correlating factors are then sort of related to the academic success of students in our environment. And those are the measures that we look at most closely at Monarch School, because it's important for us to know that the student is emotionally and socially stable when they're going into their academic learning environment. So incidentally, the academic metrics actually take a second seat to the qualitative information that we gather from our students in our community.
One of the things that I appreciate about you guys and your journey here is that you really are focusing, like you mentioned, on trauma-informed approaches. And it's something a lot of industries are opening their eyes about and becoming more aware, whether it's a school or a housing department or a property management office. Explain some of the unique aspects of your mission that you're doing, and then maybe how other industries can understand this trauma-informed approach that you've talked about, because it's a strength of what you guys are doing.
It is the strength of what there are three practices that root our behavior here: trauma-informed care, restorative practice, and strength-based practice, which all sounds very jargony, but here's what it boils down to. We greet kids and welcome them every day, and we avoid punitive action. We avoid traditional models of authoritative discipline in our school environment, which is a restorative approach. And when we talk to our kiddos and their families, we talk to them about what they're already good at. What are their assets? What are they proud of? What do they bring to their daily family environment that they know is successful and that's working for them? Because there is no one more resourceful and talented at solving problems than an unhoused family, and especially an unhoused parent. And let's learn from them. So those three practices come together in our environment, and everybody that works here is trained in these practices. And what it does is it creates an environment of equity. We are all experiencing life, and we're all learning from each other. Everyone and anyone can learn and grow. And in this environment, we nurture that belief system. And we also create an environment where if you show up 2 hours late for school, you know what happens in a traditional school? If you show up 2 hours late, you're going to get detention and you're going to get sent to somebody's office, right? Here, we say to our kiddos, I'm so happy to see you. We're really glad you made it today. It's really not the same around here when you're not here. We're glad to be able to see you and smile and have you in our classroom today. Let's get you there. Let's get you caught up. That's a completely different approach because it nurtures safety. And those three practices by themselves are really critical. But when you pull them together and create a very strong force of welcoming, belonging in school, utilizing those practices, you're creating a space of safety. And as I said earlier, safety is the critical linchpin for a student who is dealing with trauma to be able to learn in their school environment and otherwise.
So thinking of those kids that are in their junior and senior year, how are you helping develop them for the next stage and really positioning them for success?
I can't even explain to you how much gratitude we have for a community that supports us and allows us to nurture the dreams of our students. So once a kid's sort of approaching high school and beyond, if we've done our job well and right, they have begun to identify a path of pursuit that feels interesting to them. And so what we do is we invest a lot of effort, energy, time, and resources in the individual cultivation of our kiddos' dreams by bringing them to life skill development opportunities like internships, like one-on-one coaching with professionals that serve in an industry that's of interest to the student. We had this really cool experience this year where we happened to have a bunch of seniors that were interested in the field of forensics. And so the local coroner's office invited the kiddos in to learn from them and give them sort of a day in the life of a forensic professional. Those kinds of experiences are, and that's, one of several different examples, but those kinds of experiences are life-changing for all kids because it's not just a dream at that point, it's an attainable opportunity. And so we bring students out to visit schools, universities and schools, and we also really, really promote the importance of community school constructs and how wonderfully important those environments can be when you're continuing to explore what your interests are and what your skills are. And so we have a really comprehensive program, but what makes it unique is the focus on the individual. They're not cookie cutter, and they're intentionally meant to allow the individual student who is really, really coming out of a place of sustained trauma to consider what that means for them so that they're not repeating cycles and that they are able to maintain stability in adulthood.
This is such a remarkable organization, and I can't wait to hear more, but we're going to have to stop here. So coming up in the second part of my talk with Afira DeVries, the president and CEO of Monarch School Project, Afira shares the origin of the school's name.
Our students actually named our school Monarch School. They named it the Monarch School because it made them feel like it was a metamorphosis, and the idea of going from being one thing to another thing because of the natural evolution and process of the environment you're in was meaningful to our kids, to our students.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.